In the endless dark of the Andromeda system, there is a place that even light avoids. The moon Vaelith. It doesn't reflect light. It consumes it, a perfect void orbiting a long-dead planet. To the hardened explorers who chart the unknown, Vaelith is a navigational nightmare. A place where sensors sputter and die, where time itself seems to warp and stretch, and where no signal, no cry for help has ever escaped intact. It is a dead end, a place to be avoided at all costs. But still, Captain Elara Moonfell landed there. She had to. Her ship's long-range comms had intercepted a distress call, a ghostly fragmented message repeating a single, chilling phrase over and over. The blood is changing us. Against the warnings of her crew and the protests of her own survival instinct, she descended through the oppressive silence, her landing struts kicking up clouds of shimmering dust on the moon's unevenly dark surface. Stepping out onto Vaelith, the first thing she noticed was the color. Purple. Not a faint lavender hue, but a deep, vibrant violet. Thick droplets of it were scattered across the silver dust, shimmering and glowing with a faint internal light, as if they were somehow alive. Her suit's scanner hummed, analyzing the substance. The report that flashed across her visor was impossible. It was blood. But it was altered, twisted, infused with unknown microscopic particles that pulsed in unison, like a million tiny heartbeats. Then she saw him. He stood near the skeletal remains of a broken alien structure, a figure both tall and unnaturally still. The pale, eerie moonlight of a distant nebula seemed to polish his skin, giving it the sheen of stone. His eyes weren't human. They glowed with a soft, ultraviolet light. As he turned to face her, a disquieting wrongness made the hair on her neck stand up. His shadow moved just a fraction of a second, out of sync with his body, a phantom echo of his own form. His voice, when it came, was calm, resonant, and carried across the void without effort. "I am not your enemy," he said, the words cutting through the silence. "But I am no longer what I was." He called himself Sorinth. He told her he had once been human, a member of a research team that had vanished decades ago. No, he was something else entirely. A vampire, he explained, but not one born of ancient Earth myth or superstition. He was a product of alien science, a creation of the Andromeda system. His blood was violet because it was no longer just blood. It had been rewritten by a terrifying alien biology, transforming it into a living conduit for a power that fed not on flesh, but on something far more fundamental: identity. "I feed on life," Sorinth admitted, his glowing eyes fixed on Elara. "But the moon." "The moon feeds on me." Slowly, Elara began to understand the true horror of Vaelith. This wasn't just a dead moon. It was a prison. A quarantine zone established by an ancient, long-vanished Andromedan species to contain their most catastrophic failure. They had tried to create something, a being they called the Architect of Forms, but they had failed. The Architect wasn't a creature in the way we understand it. It was a principle. A sentient, malevolent force of biological redesign. It didn't just kill or mutate its victims. It reached into their very being, their fears, their hidden thoughts, their suppressed instincts, and reshaped their bodies to match. Those exposed to its influence didn't just change. They became wrong versions of themselves. A subtle, creeping horror that dismantled a person from the inside out. Limbs would be subtly misplaced, a hand angled just a few degrees too far. Faces would express emotions their owners didn't feel, a rictus grin on a face full of terror. Their very movements would lag, as if reality itself was struggling to keep up with the constant, horrifying revisions. As if summoned by their conversation, a survivor staggered from the shadows of the broken alien ruin. His body was still recognizably human, but the proportions were all slightly, sickeningly off. His spine bent in places it shouldn't, his head tilted at an impossible angle, as if he were listening to something rattling around inside his own bones. His whisper was a dry, rasping sound. "It's inside us," he croaked, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond fear of death. "It doesn't break us. It redesigns us." The truth slammed into Elara with the force of a physical blow. The Architect lay dormant, sleeping beneath the moon's surface. But it awoke whenever Sorinth fed. When his violet blood spilled onto the sterile dust, the moon itself responded. The ground would begin to ripple, to breathe. The alien structures would twist into new, impossible geometries. Gravity would lean sideways, pulling everything off balance, and then it rose. The villain of Vaelith revealed itself. a towering silhouette stitched together from 1,000 failed forms. It was a collage of biological mistakes, wings that had never learned the mechanics of flight, eyes that blinked out of sequence, a body that was constantly correcting itself and failing, spasming and rebuilding in a perpetual state of agony and flux. Its voice was not a sound, but a physical force that seemed to fold space around Ilara. "Perfection is a process," it boomed, the words echoing inside her skull. But as the monstrous architect reached for him, Sorinth screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain or terror. It was a roar of pure, defiant resistance. His violet blood began to burn, glowing brighter and brighter until he was a beacon of purple light against the oppressive dark. He planted himself firmly between Ilara and the thing that had made him. "I will not be your template again," he snarled, his voice filled with an eternity of suffering and rage. The architect was eager to reclaim its most successful, most perfect creation. Its multi-jointed limbs reached for Sorinth. But instead of fighting it, Sorinth turned inward. With a final desperate act of will, he drained himself. He unleashed the very essence of his being, the stolen identities, the life force he had consumed. A silent explosion of purple light erupted outward. It wasn't violent, but it was absolute. The architect froze mid-reach, its constant, twitching motion ceasing. Its control loop, the very thing that allowed it to steal and reshape life, had collapsed. Without a steady stream of stolen identities to refine and perfect, it began to unravel. The mismatched forms detached, falling away like dead leaves. Reality, which had been stretched and twisted, snapped back into place, and then Vaelith went silent once more. When Ilara finally escaped that cursed noon, she looked back one last time. It was dark. A perfect void, just as the star charts had described. Centuries have passed since Captain Moonfell's harrowing ordeal. In the modern star charts of the Andromeda galaxy, the moon Vaelith is marked with the highest level of warning. Forbiddance. Quarantine. Do not approach. Yet sometimes, ships that drift too close to its designated exclusion zone report strange sensor readings. They report seeing a lone pale figure standing on the moon's dark surface, glowing with a faint violet light. A figure that seems unchanged, unaging, forever watching. They say the vampire remains there willingly. A permanent guardian. A silent sentinel standing guard over the place where bodies learned the true terror of being redesigned. And where blood, against all odds, learned how to remember who it once was. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy explorations into the dark corners of science fiction and cosmic horror, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll see you in the next void.